Today we are going to be making this snow material in Blender, and I'll be showing you step by step how to do so. This is the final product of what we are making, so stick around and learn something. Let's get into it. So to get started, you're just going to want to set up your scene something like this. Got an icosphere subdivided about 5 times, shaded it smooth. Put a light up here, up to watts on it, set the camera up over here, went to EV settings, turned on the ambient occlusion, bloom, and screen space reflections, and then you'll be good to go. So head over to the shading tab, and we'll set up our workspace really quickly like this. Drag our things up. We'll switch this one to 3D viewport, drag it over, go to camera view. We'll also drag this to the side because we won't be needing it. So we're going to want to start by hitting new material, and then we'll call this snow. We'll call it actually packed snow. So after you've named your snow, whatever, you're going to want to make sure you have the node wrangler add-on checked in your preferences. So just open your preferences and search up that, and then you'll be good to go. So to start out, we're going to start by adding the graininess of the snow, then we'll add the general bump, and then the color, and then we'll be done. So for the general graininess, we're going to want to add a noise texture and hit Control T, and we'll move the object into the vector, and we Control Shift left click on the noise texture, we get something looking like this. Oops, actually, not looking like that because we have to check. There we go, we get something looking like that. And then we hit Shift A and a color ramp, and we've got this. So for the general graininess, it's going to be pretty fine, and we'll want to have 3 levels of detail. So let's go ahead and make those 3 levels real quick. So we're going to select both the noise texture and the color ramp like this, and hit Control Shift D, move it down, Control Shift D again, move it down once more, and then I'll just go ahead and center this so it looks a little bit cleaner. So the next thing we're going to adjust is on this first noise texture, make sure we're viewing the color ramp's color, and we're going to adjust the scale to a 100, the detail to an 8, and the roughness will stay at a 0.5, and the distortion will go to a 0.25, like so. Then we're going to want to drag in the blacks and whites a little bit, something around a 0.1 on each side. This one will be about a 0.9, just so we get a little bit more contrast going on here, and the larger bits of grain in the snow, larger snowflakes, I guess what you could say is. So then on this next one, we'll go ahead and view the color ramp. We're going to want to, this one's going to be smaller, so we're going to switch the scale to a 250. Not the detail to a 250, goodness. Detail is going to be a 10, and the roughness will stay there. The distortion will also be a 0.25, just to give a little more swirly and randomness in the snowflakes. So for the black and white on this one, we're going to want to be dragging them in just slightly, something close to a 0.5 and 0.95. That's exactly 0.5. We'll just leave it there. Why not? And it's really hard to see this, but it's more visible when you scale it up on a larger landscape. Like so, like if I scale it up a little bit, Control A, rotation and scale, we can sort of see more of a difference than when it's down here and it's smaller, but same difference either way. Next is going to be the smallest ones. This is going to be 500 on the scale, 12 on the detail, roughness will stay, and distortion will be a 0.25 again. And we're going to leave the black and white on the very ends almost, just like a 0.2, something around there, and then something like a 0.98. Well, 0.986 is what I'll be using here, and this is very fine if we preview it. So this is big, tiny, medium, big, and we've got some detail going on here. So now we have the grain of the snow. We need to combine them. We'll hit Shift A, search for a mix RGB node, and then we'll switch from mix to multiply. Check clamp just cause, and then we'll move the color, the first color ramp into color 1, second one into here, and basically this is combining everything. So we'll hit Shift D, duplicate this guy, and make sure we switch the factor to a 1 as well. And then we'll just take the color from the previous mix and the color from the bottom one into here, and switch this to a factor of 1 also. So this is just combining all of them and multiplying them together and giving us these values. So the next step is going to be to factor this into the bump. So let's Shift A and search for a bump node over here. And we're going to drag the color from this into the height. And we're going to want to switch the strength all the way down to a 0.1. And if we Control Shift left click on this bump node, we can see that it's a very fine no. And it's not making a huge difference. If we switch it to a 1, you can see how bumpy and rough that gets. So we switch all the way down to a 0.1. We can go even smaller if we want to, but it starts to look a little bit too smooth at that point, so we'll leave it at 0.1. So we'll plug this normal into the normal of the principled BSDF like this. And if we preview the BSDF, the shader, it's starting to look like this. which is sort of looking like snow. There's not really any bumpiness to it or anything, or roughness yet, but the roughness is really easy. We just take the color from this and plug it into the roughness, and now it's starting to be shiny and reflect like snow you would actually see. Now this is an indoor light that we're using, so it's quite different. So we can go ahead and turn that off and then turn on the built-in HDR in the background, and it's looking very bright like this. This is like a bright sunny day. There's no shadows or anything, and so it's doing exactly what we want it to be doing. But we'll just switch back to the indoor light for now so we can sort of see some shadows going on here. So the next step is to add the generalized bump, which is just like the general waviness of the snow. Maybe some more snow landed in one place than another. Maybe it gathered here a little bit more, something like that. So to do that, we'll add this noise texture like this, plug the vector into the vector, and we'll be switching the scale on this noise texture to a 3. Very small here, the detail to a 4, and the roughness to a 0.2. And no distortion on this one, but we will be adding a color ramp. So we can hit Shift-A and search for a color ramp. Plug the factor into the factor, Control-Shift left click on the color ramp to preview, and it's looking like this. For the values on this color ramp, we're going to drag it into about a 0.15-ish, or exactly, depending on how close you get. And on the other side, it's just about a 0.85, something around there. So you think you get the contrast looking pretty good. I'll settle around about there, doesn't have to be perfect. And now we have some contrast here. So what this is going to do is it's going to factor into the bump and the bump only. So we'll hit Shift-A, search for a bump node, like this. And we'll drag the color from the color ramp into the height. And then we'll switch the strength on this to a 0.3. And if we preview this bump, it's looking something like this. So you can see the different heights and stuff going on here. If you think it's a little strong, you can always lower it, raise it, etc. Anyways, we're going to plug this normal into the bump, to the normal of the other bump. And then we'll go ahead and preview this shader right now. So right now it's looking something like this, which is okay. This bump is actually a little bit strong, so we might move it down to something like a 0.2. And now it's looking a little bit flatter, and it's a bit nicer this way. And you can sort of see the snow grain coming in here. Now you may think the snow is a little bit too strong. It shouldn't be so grainy. It should be a lot smoother. You can switch this to like a 0.05 maybe on the strength, and it starts looking a little bit smoother if you like that effect better. And that's what we'll leave it at for now. I'm just showing you how you can change things a little bit if you don't think it looks good. So the next step is going to be to add a color. So we'll hit Shift-A, search for another noise texture, like this. Plug the vector, oops, I did not mean to minimize that. Plug the vector into the vector of this noise texture and Control-Shift left click on it to preview. It looks something like this. And we're going to be switching some values on this one. We're going to switch the scale to a 1. So basically this is saying the colors are going to be very large and different, but it's going to take a long time to get from one to the other. Then we're going to switch the detail to a 4 and the roughness to a 0.2. Basically, it's almost all the exact same color right now. It's just very blurry, which is what we want. So we'll hit Shift-A and we'll add a color ramp. And this will be choosing our colors. So for the color on the far left, we're going to be changing the black. And we're going to give it a hue, a blue hue, which is about a 0.65, something around there. We'll settle something about here. And let me go ahead and switch this value up so we can see what's actually going on. Like a 0.75-ish, close to white, but not quite. And something like that. And then saturation, we'll be moving to about a 0.25, something like that. So it's very close to white, but not quite. And we can sort of see some variation going on here. It's very hard to tell because they're both very similar. So on this next one, we're going to be switching the hue once again to a bluish color. So about a 0.64, 65, something like that. Go with 0.66 because why not? And then we're going to be switching the value up a little bit down. We don't want a pure white. And then the saturation, just a little bit of saturation, nothing too big. And we get something looking like this. So there's a little bit of contrast and none of them are pure whites. And if you ever want to, you can drag these in more and you get more contrast in the colors like that. But obviously snow doesn't normally look like this. So we want to drag these out a bit and have them looking something like this. You can even if you want to put them on the very far, you can't really see a difference. And it just kind of blends. But you can drag them in just a little bit like this. And you can see a little bit of variation going on here in the snow and the color. So then with this, we're going to take the color and we're going to drag into the base color and then preview the shader again. And the snow's looking like this. This is like, whoa, this is way too blue. And I'm like, you know what? I agree. It is way too blue. or grayish even. Is that because of the indoor light? Well, let's see. If we turn off the scene light and turn on the HDRI again, it's looking a lot like snow. It's very white, sort of a bluish tint coming off of it, and that's sort of what we want. We can drag these to the end and we get more of a uniform color. But if we want, we can drag this up a little bit and we get some more variation. But basically, this is the final product of the snow. I do think we should add some more graininess back in. So I'll be switching this back to a 0.1. So now we can see sort of the detail going on the snow here. Maybe a 0.075 is better. Maybe not. If we switch it to a 0, it looks like this. It looks almost like plastic now. But if we switch it to a 0.05, we sort of get the grain going on here. And that's what we'll be leaving it at. And as to this other bump, if we switch it to a 0, it looks like this. This is like ultra packed snow. We switch it to a 0.1. We get a little bit of variation, like maybe some wind blew some stuff over or something. And then 0.2, we get a lot more bumpiness in it. And with a 1, obviously, it looks like this, which doesn't even look like snow at this point. 0.5, we get like someone's been walking over it. Anyways, you can play with that bump, with this bump and this bump to make it seem like someone's been walking over it versus they haven't. I'm going to be leaving it a 0.2 and a 0.05 for this tutorial though. So anyways, if we go back to the camera view, it's very white as you would see in normal snow if you're looking outside. And so yeah, that is going to, actually, this color is way too strong. We'll drag it down to like a 0.1. Yep, but that's the end of this tutorial. Hopefully you enjoyed and you can use this snow material and blend it maybe with some rocks to have like some snow-topped rocks. And if any of you want some advice on how to blend the shaders properly and have it, snow on the top but not on the bottom, like maybe like a snow-topped rock or something like that, I can do a tutorial on that if that's something you want. Anyway, just let me know about that. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.